It is May 11th, 2026, and we have no shortage of college football drama to get into today. Welcome in to another episode of Armchair Analysis. Hope you guys are having a great start to your week so far. This is going to be an interesting video. It is, look, there's a lot to be made about the interview that dropped with Vanity Fair for Lane Kiffin, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. I'm gonna dig into this just a little bit differently, more so from a college football fan's perspective than anything else. So, kind of bear with me on this. Hear this thing out as best you can, especially if you're an LSU fan, or an Ole Miss fan even, because honestly, I think I'm gonna cover this as best as I can. And honestly, I feel like this is kind of the majority of the thoughts I've seen, at least throughout social media, since it's dropped today. So I feel like I land kind of with the majority here, but we'll see how it goes. We also got some talks about USC Notre Dame getting the rivalry going again. We know that it's going to be a little while before that rivalry carries on, but we're going to talk a little bit about it, some of the things that we're hearing right now. So, with all that said, let's go ahead and get into this and start with this Lane Kiffin situation. And look, I'm going to call it his real reason for leaving Ole Miss, even though I think it's kind of just a lot of PR BS, really. Look, it's no secret that, or at least it wasn't any secret, really, as to why Lane Kiffin left Ole Miss. LSU is a historically better program with more money behind it, and they were paying him more. What more could you say here? I mean, it was the same reason he was probably going to leave for Florida. So when you talk about that to start, that's one thing, and that's what we expected. But then we get this interview from Vanity Fair that dropped, and I haven't read the whole article because honestly I don't subscribe to them. But I've read a lot of synopsis of it. I've seen other articles kind of summarizing it, and the big quote I keep seeing is that it's essentially, I'm going to summarize it with kids' grandparents not letting them go to Ole Miss. Cites diversity as a big point of contention with the Ole Miss program. And I'm going to be honest, I think it's I think we can look at this as a mix of a couple things here. One, a recruiting play. Let's call that what it is. It's a recruiting play. Look, Kiffin, for rightful reasons, probably pissed because when he left Ole Miss, Pete Golding didn't go with him. And Pete Golding managed to maintain a good portion of the roster, actually, keep it together a lot better than I thought it was going to. And those that left didn't particularly go to LSU. I mean, there were a number that went with Lane Kiffin, but in the way that you might have thought, a portion of them didn't. And I think that was kind of the point of some of these quotes is more so a recruiting play than it is a real reason. And look, Ole Miss is staying relevant because Pete Golding did a great job in the playoff. The results weren't what they wanted, but with all the things that went on throughout throughout the entire situation, Pete Golding kept it together, and I think he's going to make a really good coach. So I'm excited for Ole Miss. I can't wait to preview Ole Miss later. However, Lane Kiffin leaves, and again, that frustration probably is where we see some of these comments. I think that if we really want to talk about what this is, it's a recruiting play and it's an excuse in a handful of ways. Diversity didn't stop Lane Kiffin from winning 10-plus games at Ole Miss. Didn't stop Lane Kiffin from making Ole Miss a more desirable destination than LSU was at the time of him leaving and going to LSU. Or Florida, for that matter. Ole Miss currently was at the time of all this situation happening, Ole Miss was the more desirable location because of what Lane Kiffin could do and provide players in terms of opportunities, what his system brought, and the NFL talent that it's produced over the last few years. You look at that, they made the college football playoff. He left the college football playoff team out. For what? Because there was for lack of a better term, kind of a measuring contest, if we can say that as PG as possible, that I think made things difficult and really unmanageable going forward for that program, and specifically for Lane Kiffin with that program. Am I trying to sit here and say that these problems probably didn't happen? No, because I'm sure they did. I mean, look, you look at the entire climate of really the United States right now, and I'm not going to get into that. This isn't a political show, and it never will be. But you look at the climate, you look at how people can't get along, how people kind of use racially charged motives to divide people. Am I saying that that's not a possibility that it happened? No, because it probably has, at least once or twice. But I don't think that that's the main reason that they didn't bring in highly touted classes. It's because the brand's not there. It's plain and simple. The brand is not there. Look, there is a history at Ole Miss. They are rooted in this history, as a matter of fact. The name Ole Miss comes from the history of the Confederate state of Mississippi, where they where slavery was once a thing. Like, let's not sit here and act like that's not a reality. Let's not sit here and act like Colonel Reb wasn't meant to be a Confederate general or a Confederate soldier of some sort. I don't know the full story of that, but I do know that that is the gist of what Colonel Reb was. Now, Colonel Reb stopped being used in 2010. They moved on to what I believe was a black bear, if I remember correctly. Now they got the land shark, which is kind of the more recognized mascot that I think they've had in the time since. There's no secret that Ole Miss, up until I think 1997, they placed a ban on flags, plain and simple, because there were so many rebel flags in the stands, Confederate flags in the stands. Those are all real things. This is all things that did happen at Ole Miss 15, 20 in the flag case about 30 years ago now, believe it or not, in 1997. But these things are all so far in the past that I don't think that they're really that thought about. Look, Ole Miss is a very diverse university. It's a very good university, one of the most quality schools in the SEC, top to bottom. And yeah, it's a lot of frats. It's a lot of rich kids. At least that's the way that it's perceived through media, through the way that they kind of show the Grove and how they kind of, when game day goes there, how everything kind of points Ole Miss. It's known as kind of a rich kid college. I think that's one reason why diversity might be a little different, or might be claimed as different. I don't think it really stands tall though, because you look at the population. I think it's more so just the area. But you look at what these teams are. What this is, a football program. It's a really sound football program, and it started with Hugh Freeze prior to his problems there, and it kind of carried on, and Lane Kiffin's really only accelerated and kind of put them into the conversation that they are in now. The reason that he left is not just these reasons. There is money involved. There is NIL involved. There is probably better facilities. The fact that it's considered at least a fringe, if not a blue blood university in college football. And it certainly has a better history than Ole Miss. And the ability to lead one of the premier brands in college football should be enticing to every coach in college football. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. And so when you look at all of these things, I think all of them can be true at once. But I think that this right here was more of a recruiting hit piece than it was an actual reason. Can we acknowledge that for what it is? I don't know. I find it weird and honestly kind of I don't know. I find these types of topics interesting because, one, we know what it is. I just called it what it is. It's a recruiting hit piece. But what it also is, when we talk about some of these, I guess, political conversations, I don't like them. I don't care about politics whatsoever. As a matter of fact, plain and simple, I don't care. So when it comes to these, I find it weird to try to talk about them. I find it uncomfortable. It's something I have to deal with and get over, but not in the sense that it's going to be here every day. So if you didn't like that piece, understand that it's not the most comfortable I've ever been, and I'm sorry. But I wanted to call it what it was. Let's call this out for what it is. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that here today. Moving on, USC Notre Dame. Look, this is a rivalry that has stood the test of realignment. It has stood the test of playoff expansions and regular seasons meaning less. I don't know, and in all that conversation of playoff expansion, the regular season meaning less, all of these things, here's a couple things I will tell you. Okay. USC and Notre Dame is a rivalry that has spanned decades of two of the premier programs in college football. USC has been a powerhouse since probably the mid 60s, if I can guess off of a general estimate. Notre Dame has been a powerhouse since they started playing football, because why not? These two programs are premier. They want to beat each other every time they play. I've actually been able to experience this game in person. The 2018 Notre Dame USC game was so fun because Notre Dame was a playoff contender and USC was a team that was trying to spoil it, and they were up 10-0 at halftime. Notre Dame's comeback was one of pure, we don't want to lose this game and we want to make the playoff. And more so, I think it had to do with the rivalry. This is a game that people care about. This is a game that both fan bases are very, very vested in. You talk about playoff expansion. Well, let me tell you something. Go back to, let's see, what was the date here? Was it November 29th? November 29th, 2025. Go back to that day. Go back to Big Noon Kickoff on November 29th of 2025 and tell me that Ohio State and Michigan didn't want to beat each other. Michigan was out of the playoff. They had nothing to play for. They came into that game wanting to beat Ohio State and hung around for a quarter, essentially. Ohio State came into that game wanting to beat Michigan because they hadn't done it since 2019. You tell me that those games still don't mean something? You tell me that rivalry doesn't mean something to people? That's the argument that I think people are taking way too far in this playoff expansion conversation. We might actually bring this up tomorrow, so I'll save some of my thoughts there. But let's talk about this rivalry. Look, the biggest reason that it stopped was because of a scheduling dynamic conflict, really. USC wanted it early in the season because of the reason being the playoff committee has punished teams for losing late in the season, has punished teams for going cold, if you will. The Notre Dame reasoning is anytime, anywhere, except for when you want it to be. We want to do it on our terms. Look, I think these are two programs that are way too far into their egos to really see eye to eye on this. I think USC is correct to an extent. I think Notre Dame is correct to an extent. And Lincoln Riley has even said anytime, anywhere. So I don't know why we're still arguing about this. Put the game wherever you want in the season and let them play. Let it play out. Especially with a 2014 playoff, that's probably the whole reason this is even being talked about, is the expansion talks of playoff, where this game won't mean as much, and it won't hurt as bad if they lose, but you can still play the rivalry game. You can still have a meaningful game. The talk is that this is potentially a 2030 type of thing, with both teams kind of being scheduled out until 2030. It would just have to fit in there. The other problem for USC is just trying to fit it into a 3-game non-conference schedule. Obviously, it would fit into one of their Power 4 requirement games. If I remember correctly, the Big Ten's got a requirement for that. And if they don't, they should. Every Power 4 conference should have that requirement. One of their 3 non-cons being another Power 4. But to me, I mean, look, this is a rivalry that has, again, stood the test of time. Decades of two teams that are flagship programs in college football. And to me, when you think about those types of rivalries, those are the ones that mean the most. Those are the rivalries that begin to have a soft spot, I think, in a lot of college football fans, especially the diehard fans of college football who love what college football was. For me, my first year watching college football was 2007. What a year to do it. I was 7 years old, but what a year to do it. As a kid, I grew up, I watched every Michigan game, and I won't lie to you, I watched every Michigan game. I have watched every Michigan game since 2006 Michigan Ohio State. I watched every one of them. I have been to I don't want to say countless. I've been to probably 10 different college football games at this point. I'm going to add another 6 at a minimum this year, that I know for sure. I'm a college football fan at heart. Look, I mean, I don't care what it is. And the more rivalries we can keep intact, the more of these types of games that get gritty, that get to be chippy in the middle of them, these are the games that mean the most. These are the games that we all love and care about. And the more of them we can keep around, the more Michigan, Ohio State, the more USC, Notre Dame, the more Michigan and Notre Dame. Get that game back on the schedule, please. The more of those that we can put out there for fans to watch and consume, the more the regular season is going to mean. It's always going to mean something. The regular season doesn't get diminished because of a playoff. It gets diminished because people just stop caring because they don't have the same implications they once had. There are a group of diehard college football fans, and I'm going to be honest, I don't think that people like Josh Pate are one of them. There are a group of diehard college football fans who actually love every single game that's put on the field. I'm one of them. I know that for a fact. I will watch any game, any day, any time that it comes onto the field. And because of that, I don't sit here and give the SEC, the Big Ten, all of my time. I don't give the Power Four all of my time. You can see that perfectly from the fact that I just did a video on USF on Friday. Make sure you check that out. It's preview season a little early. The fact that I'm going to preview both North Dakota State and Sacramento State as they jump up to FBS. I don't think anybody's going to do that other than the ones who want a little clickbait video. I'm going to preview quite a few G4, G6 teams, as we go on. There are not many people who actually love college football the way I do. But what I can tell you is that the people that do know just how much these rivalry games mean to people. They know what Illinois and Northwestern means. They know what Indiana and Purdue means because they watched both of those teams be 2-9 coming into them and have a chance for 3 wins, and that was all they were going to get that year, but that game meant everything on that final Saturday of November. There are people who grew up watching the triad plus the greater Raleigh teams, Wake Forest, NC State, Duke, and UNC, all 4 have their quad rivalry year in and year out in the ACC, and those games meant everything to everybody. I can tell you right now, as somebody who has kind of grown into the Wake Forest program as it's my local team, I can tell you what those games mean. I can tell you what that means to those programs. There are people when South Carolina and Clemson didn't mean shit to anybody that would watch those games. The regular season means something, and this game would mean just as much in a 2014 playoff as it would now. USC Notre Dame needs to stay. And it is one of the most fun rivalry games. It is both teams want to win as much as anybody could in a rivalry game. It's what college football is all about. It needs to stay. I went on a little bit of a passionate rant. I think we're going to talk about this tomorrow. We're going to have a video about the college football playoff expansion and the false narratives that are being placed around it, because only casual college football fans would believe that games mean less because of a playoff. So we'll talk a little bit more about it. I thank you all for tuning in, though. Let me know what you guys think. Should USC Notre Dame return? Hopefully sooner. And do you believe that Lane Kiffin really has the reasons that he stated, or is it more so the brand and a recruiting play? Let me know what you think down below. Make sure you check us out over on social media. Been a little more active there, continuing to get more active there, learning the social media game a little bit. Again, it's a one-man crew here. It's a one-man crew here. And so trying to do it all. Keep in mind, we're also on Spotify now, so follow us over there if you haven't already. Check out the Discord. All those links, plus the social media links, are down below in the description. Check out the Discord. We're going to have plenty of college football stuff over there as well, whether it comes from the side of college football video game content, or if we're talking more in the sense of what we could see around the season. We'll talk about game threads. We'll talk about different storylines that come out through college football. The more we can grow that community, the better, and I appreciate y'all for doing so. Make sure you stick around. Again, like, subscribe if you enjoyed. And with all that said, I'll see y'all tomorrow for another episode of Armchair Analysis.